They weren't just treasure hunters, they were the heartbeat of storage wars. Week after week, we laughed at their rivalries, cheered their victories, and held our breath when the lockers swung open. But as the years passed, some of those familiar faces suddenly disappeared, leaving fans stunned and full of questions. Were they hiding personal battles? Did behind-the-scenes feuds tear them apart? Or was it something far more heartbreaking? Tonight, we uncover the untold truth behind the legends of storage wars. From shocking exits to life-changing tragedies, this is the real story of the stars we once rooted for, and what really became of them when the cameras stopped rolling. Bari Weiss wasn't just another cast member on Storage Wars, he was the very heartbeat of the show. From the very first moment he rolled into an auction in one of his classic vintage cars, wearing his signature gloves and flashing that mischievous grin, fans instantly knew they were witnessing someone unforgettable. Bari didn't need to be the loudest bidder or the sharpest negotiator to command attention, his presence alone lit up the screen. He was more than entertainment, he was the soul that made the chaos of bidding feel like pure fun. While others chased profits, argued over margins, and fought tooth and nail for every dollar, Bari brought something priceless: joy. To him, every storage locker wasn't just a gamble, it was an adventure, a hidden story waiting to be discovered. He had a gift for turning dusty boxes and forgotten relics into treasures of imagination, reminding viewers that the thrill of discovery was just as valuable as the money. In a show built on competition, Bari Weiss stood apart as the man who made us believe that behind every locked door lay not just profit, but magic. When he stumbled upon an old jukebox, he would often spend more time reminiscing about the music it used to play than assessing its resale value. Upon discovering vintage collectibles, his eyes would shine like a child's on Christmas morning. Bari recognized that the true treasure wasn't always what could be sold. Sometimes, it was the thrill of the unknown and the anticipation of what might be found next. His approach to the show was refreshingly unique. Bari had already amassed his wealth in the produce industry long before Storage Wars became popular. For him, the auctions weren't a matter of survival, they were about enjoyment. This freedom enabled him to take risks that others would shy away from. He would bid on units that appeared to be worthless and pass on guaranteed wins simply because they didn't ignite his curiosity. Viewers adored this aspect of his personality, as it reminded them of why they initially fell in love with the show, the excitement of discovery. Bari's charm made even the most ordinary finds captivating. He could turn a box of old books into an engaging conversation about forgotten authors or transform a dusty piece of furniture into a lesson on craftsmanship from years gone by. His expertise went beyond mere surface knowledge. Bari had a genuine understanding of antiques, collectibles, and the narratives behind them. He held a deep respect for the items he uncovered, treating each find with the reverence it warranted. However, after just 4 seasons, Bari quietly exited the show. There was no dramatic farewell or heated dispute with the producers. He simply felt it was time to turn the page on that chapter of his life, much like someone finishing a beloved book and placing it back on the shelf with care. Fans were disappointed, yet most understood. Bari had never come across as someone who craved the limelight. He was merely a person who liked to tell people about his exploits. Following his departure from Storage Wars, Bari maintained a quiet profile for years. He went back to his other interests, searching antiques, collecting vintage automobiles, and partaking in adventures that didn't include media crews or cameras. With the same kind grin and contagious energy that made him famous, he would occasionally appear in interviews or guest appearances. Before things changed in 2019, Bari Weiss's life appeared to be going well. Bari was in a terrible collision while he was riding his favorite motorcycle around the streets of Los Angeles. He suffered several shattered bones, extensive internal damage, and severe injuries to his legs and chest as a result of the catastrophic accident. All of a sudden, the man who had always exuded confidence and looked unstoppable was in a hospital bed, battling for his life. The recuperation process took a long time and was challenging. Bari had to endure months of therapy in addition to multiple surgeries. Basic actions had to be relearned by the same hands that had previously studied old artifacts with great care. His legs, which carried him through innumerable auctions, needed to learn how to walk painlessly. The absolute silence must have been quite difficult for someone who had led such an adventurous and lively life. However, Barry persevered because of his spirit, which is what made Storage Wars fans adore him. He addressed his recuperation with the same curiosity and patience that he had shown storage lockers. He approached mending as an adventure, taking each day as it came, rather than hurrying through it or being angry when things didn't go as planned. Fans were ecstatic to see Barry when he finally started appearing in public once more. His smile was still warm and his humor was still there, but his pace had changed. He spoke a bit more seriously and moved a bit more gently. Although the event had altered him, his soul remained unbroken. Hester, Dave. If Storage Wars were a poker table, Dave Hester would be the one to grin and slap his chips down to startle the other players. He was the man you loved to despise from the first episode. Dave thrived on competition and was loud, self-assured, and never scared to outbid someone by a single dollar. In addition to being his signature, his notorious YUP became a source of frustration for the other bidders. He desired the final word, the finest locker, and the biggest profit. However, Dave's story took a dramatic change in 2018. He had a stroke late one night, which left him with speech and coordination issues. He was facing weeks of rehabilitation while laying in a hospital bed rather than in front of a storage unit. It was a moment of humility for a man who thrived on dominance. For a spell, Dave was absent from the show. His own health was the new battle facing the guy who had once battled valiantly over dusty crates. He gradually regained his vigor and went back to the world of auctions. Fans were aware of the shift, even if Storage Wars was no longer his primary platform. He appeared more at ease, less engaged in never-ending conflict, and more intent on having fun. People respected the man who battled his way back from a potentially fatal situation, even if they didn't enjoy his antics. It demonstrated that sometimes the loudest voice must become silent before it can be heard again. Calvin Ivey. Ivey's Storage Wars wasn't something Calvin walked into. As if he owned the place, he strode in. Ivey, a mixed martial artist and former arena football player, exuded a confidence that caused others to move aside as he entered. He was known as the King of Palmdale and was able to quickly identify a valuable locker. Ivey saw the storage game as more than just a way to earn money. Running a tight ship was the goal. Every item had a place in his resale shop, Grandma's Attic, which he took great delight in. He was the type of purchaser who could find a hidden treasure beneath a stack of dirty blankets and still find time to crack jokes with his rivals. Over time, however, supporters became aware of something. He was becoming less visible. His competitive edge and loud chuckle were still there, although they were less frequent. Ivey was concentrating on his health and spending more time with his family away from the cameras. In subsequent appearances, his sons frequently accompanied him, transforming the auctions from stressful competitions into family vacations. Ivey demonstrated that sometimes the greatest triumphs take place behind closed doors by stepping aside without a fuss. Sheets, Daryl. Daryl Sheets was the crazy elder cousin who would wager his last penny only for the excitement of winning, if Barry Weiss was the cool uncle. Daryl lived true to his moniker as the gambler, ever aiming for the big score. If he believed a locker may conceal something amazing, he had no problem throwing a lot of money at it. Alongside him, his son Brandon frequently showed up, learning how to take measured chances and sometimes learning why he shouldn't. This was more than just business for Daryl. He wanted to leave his son with a legacy he could be proud of. However, everything changed in the beginning of 2019. Daryl experienced an unexpected chest ache during a typical day. He initially chose to ignore it, but as it worsened, he found himself in the midst of a severe heart attack. The health scare wasn't the only one. It was a matter of life or death. It was a necessity, not a choice, for the adrenaline-loving man to calm down. There was an obvious void in the show because of his absence. Fans missed his bold demeanor, his tremendous victories, and even bigger losses. Jared Schultz and Randy Piantai. Because they were so fun to watch, they were like the couple next door who somehow managed to get invited to every party. Viewers could see they were complete opposites from the first episode. Jared's let's just wing it attitude and Brandy's calm, collected demeanor. With laser-like focus, she would stand there looking through a storage container, attempting to determine whether the stack of boxes was worth the risk. The excitement of placing a bid would be enough to make him want to do so. They were amusing because of that push and pull. As Jared pursued something dubious, you could almost feel Brandy rolling her eyes. And when she proved to be correct, you could see Jared smile. They were able to balance one another. He added excitement. She was cautious. They made choices together that occasionally turned out well and other times not so well. They occasionally operated their own thrift store on the show, making money off of their finds. However, beneath the giggling and arguing, things were shifting. Away from the cameras. They were having a difficult relationship. By 2020, the information was surreptitiously leaked. They were no longer together. There was no public verbal sparring or dramatic on-screen blowout. It simply occurred. Brandy later alluded to how difficult the relationship had been. Although she withheld some information, it was evident that it had been difficult and traumatic. Following the breakup, Brandy turned her attention from the rigorous filming schedule to her kids. For his part, Jared lost the limelight as well. The show felt strange without their back-and-forth banter. Fans missed them as a team as much as individuals. They served as evidence that treasure hunts aren't just about finding antiques and trinkets. Even though a relationship doesn't continue forever, there are instances when its true worth lies in the chemistry between two people. Casey Neisota and Renee. Renee and Casey brought a completely different energy to Storage Wars. Renee had a keen sense of what was valuable, and his loud voice could cut through any crowd. In contrast, Casey counterbalanced him with a kind disposition and meticulous attention to detail. They were clearly not merely pretending to be partners. They actually got along well in life and in the storage industry. The world of reselling was nothing new to Renee. He had spent years searching for treasures and making money from them, having grown up surrounded by it. Casey wasn't merely a passenger. From identifying high-quality products to handling the business side of things, she possessed unique skills. As a team, they were formidable. They also had no problem having a little fun. Although their interactions were light-hearted on film, it was always obvious that they valued one another's intuition. They all joined together to celebrate their tremendous win. They ignored it and went on when a locker proved to be a bore. However, life has a way of changing priorities. Renee's father died of lung cancer in 2023 following a brief fight. When Renee talked about it, people could sense the anguish in his voice. It was a tough time. He conveyed his sincere appreciation for the help he got from friends and viewers. The couple's journey appeared to take on a new dimension as a result of the loss. Building something long-lasting is more important than chasing the next big success. Laura and Dan Dodson. Without Dan Dodson's pulsating chant and his wife Laura's radiant grin, Storage Wars wouldn't feel the same to many fans. They were not there to place a bid. Their purpose was to maintain the auctions. They did it stylishly, too. Long before the show, Dan had been auctioneering. Even a stack of old crates could seem thrilling thanks to his lightning-fast delivery. Laura was by his side, maintaining a positive vibe and a welcoming environment. No matter how heated the bidding became, they worked together to keep the pace steady. However, their world was on the verge of disintegrating in 2014. Dan woke up one morning with a strange feeling. He had hazy eyesight and fell apart in a matter of minutes. Laura didn't think twice. She took him right away to the hospital. Physicians quickly identified a brain aneurysm as the culprit. It was a dire scenario. Dan might not have made it through without emergency surgery. The recovery was even more difficult than the operation itself. He recovered his strength over the course of several months, with Laura's help at every turn. Even though he walked a little more slowly than previously, fans were relieved when he eventually made his way back to the auction block. For them, the scare was a turning point. They still have a deep affection for the world of auctions, but they also realized how rapidly things can change. They seemed to laugh a little louder and grin a little warmer after learning that. Padon, Mary. The other bidders weren't like Mary Padon. Mary appeared to view every auction as a small adventure, but many of her rivals approached the storage lockers with a keen calculator in their minds, calculating profit margins and resale value. A dusty box was more than simply a dusty box to her. It could be a lost chapter in history or a potential gem that is just waiting for a new beginning. Her inventiveness immediately distinguished her when she made her debut on the Texas spin-off Storage Wars Texas. Mary had previously served as the editor of Architectural Digest's assistant, giving her experience in both design and journalism. She developed an eye for distinctive objects and the creativity to envision what they may become as a result of that experience. She was frequently seen on the show searching into lockers, removing items that most people would pass by, such as an old trunk or a worn-out chair, and immediately imagining how to turn them into something lovely. She had a cheerful, eccentric, and affectionate manner. Others occasionally quarreled over bids, but Mary took a more cordial and cooperative stance. She forged close bonds with other cast members, occasionally joining forces to attack a locker. Her excitement was infectious, and viewers liked seeing her get truly enthused about a treasure, no matter how small. Mary carried that same charm with her when she switched from the Texas version to the original Storage Wars, which was set in California. She did more than simply buy and sell. She created unique objects that combined creativity and functionality by repurposing, reimagining, and transforming her finds. Because of her talent for transforming what was considered trash into jewels, fans dubbed her the Junkster. However, Mary started to show up less and less over time. In order to sell her restored objects to clients who shared her passion for creative upcycling, she redirected her attention to operating her online business. In addition, she began traveling, taking on more personal projects, and looking for fresh chances apart from the demanding filming schedule. Fans continue to connect with Mary's spirit even though she is no longer a regular on the show. She demonstrated that Storage Wars was about more than just making money. It might also have to do with creativity, enthusiasm, and discovering beauty in the most unlikely places. Wares, Emily. Despite joining Storage Wars later than others, Emily Wares had impressive credentials. She had already won awards as an auctioneer by the time she made her appearance in Season 10. She began her profession in Iowa at the age of 17, receiving training from her father, who was also in the auction industry. She soon gained recognition for her strong stage presence and lightning-fast chant. She introduced something fresh to the show. She didn't place a bid. She was present to conduct the auctions with professionalism and accuracy. Even the more seasoned cast members were surprised by Emily's professional and clean manner and her quickness on the mic. She broke norms in a business that is frequently dominated by older men by being one of the youngest professional auctioneers to ever appear on the show at the age of 27. Emily stood out in the sector because, aside from storage fights, she had participated in and won other auctioneering competitions. She kept things moving on the show, but she also didn't hesitate to joke around with the bidders, frequently responding to their banter with a swift response of her own. Her skill and charisma were well received by fans, and she gained popularity fast. Although Emily's tenure on Storage Wars was brief, just 1 or 2 seasons, there was no controversy around her departure. She chose to concentrate on her personal life instead. In addition to starting a family and marrying her longtime husband, she also pursued her passion of singing. She started releasing her songs online and performing at local events, demonstrating that her abilities went well beyond the auction block. Crossley, Kenny. Kenny Crossley turned into the type of guy you could not assist but be aware even in a crowded auction. With his easygoing attraction, deep southern drawl, and quick wit, he could flip even a disappointing locker into a second worth guffawing approximately. Kenny wasn't simply there to shop for storage units. He changed into there to have an amazing time, make friends, and experience the journey. In the beginning from New Orleans, Kenny had a colorful background before becoming a member of the Storage Wars Solid. He had worked in regulation enforcement, run his personal business, or even dabbled in diverse bizarre jobs, all of which seemed to present him a treasure chest of memories to share. His course into the Storage Public Sale International got here through a friendship with Barry Weiss, one of the display's maximum eccentric and liked stars. Kenny first seemed along Barry, helping him on his wild buying adventures. Fans immediately took to his sense of humor and proper down-to-earth personality. Whilst Barry stepped far from the display, Kenny stuck around, carving out his very own location most of the regulars. His technique to bidding became informal. He wasn't one to get into heated battles over a locker. As a substitute, he picked his spots, sometimes going for smaller devices that others omitted. His knack for recognizing uncommon, quirky objects matched perfectly together with his playful personality. Over the seasons, Kenny became recognized for his memorable one-liners and ability to lighten the temper, even in anxious bidding situations. He had a manner of creating all of us around him snigger, whether or not they had been fellow Solid members or visitors at home. Eventually, Kenny commenced appearing much less often. It wasn't because of drama or terrible blood. He truly grew to become his attention to different ventures, including his personal apparel line and a Doug Hut shop. Still, his absence did not pass disregarded. Lovers often publish online asking where he is and whether or not he's going to return.